dropped calls, sluggish service during peak hours, support tickets that bounce from rep to rep without resolution. Telecom providers have spent years trying to solve these pain points with automation and analytics. But Agentic AI takes a different approach, one that doesn't just inform decisions, but acts on them. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving tech space. And I'm your host, Priya Diyalani. Telecom isn't new to automation. For years, providers have leaned on rule-based systems and analytics to manage sprawling infrastructure and support millions of customers. But agentic AI marks a shift where systems act with a goal in mind and adapt in real time as they make decisions on their own. And agentic AI is redefining how telecom providers respond to change, especially by practicing faster decisions and continuous adaptation. Joining us today is Samit Banerjee, Division President, Customer Business Services at Amdocs, to explore the critical shift happening in telecom due to the rapid rise of agentic AI and how India is silently becoming a global hub for it. Hi, Samit. A very warm welcome to our podcast today.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you for calling me in, and I'm happy to be here.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to have you on our podcast today, Summit. So, without wasting any further time, let's just get into our conversation. And to start with, I would want to know more about Amdocs, its specialization. And alongside that, we also want to know about you, Summit. So, probably, help us understand how has the journey been till date and what exactly are you looking at Amdocs today?
Sure. So, look, Amdocs is a leading service provider for all the communication industry and the media industry that we have worldwide. This is based on the products that we develop and the services that we deliver around our product and sometimes also outside of our product portfolio. What our concentration is mainly in the area of communications and media organizations. Now, our entire portfolio that we have in terms of products and services, it takes care of the entire gamut of telecom related works that we need to do. For example, right from the network area to the BSS area, so OSS and BSS, all of that. And then in many cases where the customers or the operators would feel comfortable to give the managed services to Amdocs, then we start to perform all the regular activities also for them. For example, taking care of their data in their data centers. We can host their data in our own data centers. We can execute the regular business processes that they are running. For example, getting the billing processes done, charging done on time, getting the bill sent out on time, collections getting covered through the systems on time, and so on and so forth. So we provide a very wide gamut of services, and therefore we cover practically almost every geography around the world, as a result of which we have a mercure list of customers with us across all the different countries. We are a NASDAQ listed global company. We are reporting at the end of FY25 around $4.53 billion of revenue. From site point of view, we are present in more than almost 50 to 60 countries properly with proper global presences over there. And of course, in India, we have two sites, which is in Pune and in Gurgaon. As far as my responsibility of portfolio is concerned, I take care of the entire services delivery, so which is more than $3 billion of portfolio that I handle. This is all services around our own products or outside of our products that we provide to all our global customers worldwide. So that's my responsibility. I, of course, have to therefore manage the entire workforce that is delivering all these services globally. And of course, take the workforce to the different levels of technology shifts that are taking place, whether it was 5 years back, the huge shift that took place to the cloud, or the automations or the site reliability engineering practices. And now, of course, for the last couple of years, the massive push towards generative AI. So these are things which I'm focusing on to ensure that our customers at the end of the day are getting the best of the services that they're expecting to get from us.
Absolutely fascinating, Samit, and it's really interesting to see how companies like Amdocs, it's helping businesses navigate the evolving customer expectations with regards to cloud adoption, AI-led operations, and digital acceleration all at the same time. Uh,
Right.
Moving ahead, Samit, I think the global telecom industry is currently, at a very pivotal moment with, AI, of course, leading its recent transformation. It's AI is enabling intelligent networks, personalized services, data-driven decision making, and from automating operations to enhancing customer experiences. It is reshaping how telecom businesses create value and how people connect. And I think the industry itself has gone through multiple tech cycles. Earlier it was voice data, and now we have 5G. So why do you believe that agentic AI, represents a very different shift rather than, just another wave of automation?
Yeah, right. So look, I think whatever was happening as part of the earlier automation journeys, which was the bot-oriented work that was taking place, I think that was more rule-based. And because it was rule-based, therefore, the activities that the telecom operators were being able to carry out was very limited. It was not exactly something where they could take more dynamic decisions. So the difference that you see between what was happening yesterday on the automation oriented infrastructure is that it was more rigid. And today it is much more dynamic. It is much more logic based activities that is being carried out over here. So I believe that in today's environment, when we are moving towards all these kinds of agentic AI capabilities, the real decision making can be moved to the technology, which can enable ultimately the end subscribers much more than what it was before. And I can give some examples. For example, if you look at dynamic slicing, okay, this used to be something which is more hardware oriented, people oriented activities. Now we can make it more agentic oriented, like a typical telco can use real time AI predictive modeling to carve out basically dedicated isolated virtual networks on demand. Okay, this can be possible now. And they can give SLA guaranteed connectivity to the enterprise applications. So the large application usage that happens in banks, for example, in aeronautics, for example, in the robotics areas of the factories of automobiles, for example, they can get SLA guaranteed connectivity now, because we know that many of these companies, they need to run on software which is having ultra low latency slices. You cannot afford latency. Like take for example even the banking industry or the trading industry that you have in the financial areas, they cannot afford latency. Now this is something you can take it to the agentic era, where agents which are being deployed across the network, they can take real-time decisions by studying the anomalies that are happening and correcting it, instead of human being coming into play, getting it as a ticket, getting it as a complaint, then working on it and then resolving it. This is the differentiation that is happening from yesterday to today, which was more human oriented, time consuming, and more like a what else and if oriented activity. That is getting replaced today by this kind of a dynamism that the agentic AI can incorporate.
Very wonderfully put, Samit. And I think, or just to reflect on what you said, agentic AI seems to be changing the very nature of decision making within telecom systems. And perhaps the bigger shift here is that operators are moving from being pure connectivity providers to becoming intelligent and autonomous digital infrastructure players. And the scale of data or the real time interactions in telecom creates an environment where agentic AI could have a far more transformative impact than the previous technology cycles.
Correct. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And if we talk about, telecom industry or the ecosystem in India, I think it is the foundational layer upon which India's AI ecosystem will be built. Without robust, secure, and, future ready telecom networks, AI cannot scale to serve the needs of, billion citizens. And India's scale of connectivity, rapid digital adoption, and leadership in DPI, digital public infrastructure, it uniquely positions the country, to emerge as a global leader in AI-driven digital transformation, particularly, as the industry is advancing towards 6G networks and AI native networks.
Right.
So, what structural advantages you think India possesses right now that is enabling this shift of India, towards a more telecom AI innovative industry?
Yeah. So you rightly put it, and let me start with the point that you just now mentioned, which is the DPI. The
Yeah.
digital public infrastructure integration in India is phenomenal. I mean, today we have a very good unified identity and fraud analytics that is put in place. The fact that we have been over the last decade working on this whole Aadhaar identity platform, this structural synergy is allowing us a real-time know your customer, facial recognitions, authentications, and the automated fraud preventions. Of course, we still have few fraud cases that are ongoing on a regular basis, but I think the infrastructure is giving us a tremendous boost to stop it, okay, and act on it. And you can actually see in the last several months or several quarters, the telecom operators in India is starting to do a very good job in terms of identifying what's a fraud call and what you need to be careful about as a spam and potential frauds and so on. And that's because we have been able to invest quite well on the digital public infrastructure. The DPI is really good. I think today, if I remember, it's almost like 1,200 financial and state institutions are a part of this entire tailored AI system, which is called, I think, ASTR, which is trying to identify and block millions of fraudulent connections. But that's not the only one. I think the biggest one, if you ask me, is the fact that we have a huge, huge data footprint, perhaps the most across any country for that matter. We are consuming at the level of approximately 30 GB plus of monthly mobile data. So you can imagine the amount of data that is getting generated on a diverse data set. And imagine that now we are going to use that data set to train all kinds of complex multi-model scenarios at scale for our telecom operators. How much of data is available? And it is across the board. So it can form an excellent modeling, an excellent training ground for getting ready into that agentic environment that we are trying to get into. Outside of that, we also know that in India, we had a huge activity around fiber densification. So we had more than laid out, I think, at least about 4 million lakh routes of kilometers of fiber across the entire country. And all the companies did a fantastic job of that. If you remember the COVID days also, the fact that a billion people went home and they were still working was because we had a very good infrastructure that was getting built around that time. And that's now giving us lots of good efforts in moving forward. Another thing which is helping India distinctly is the fact that we have a multilingual country. And you look at Europe, for example, in Europe, you have all these different countries with different languages. They would need a lot of time to really integrate between themselves. They do not have a single kind of an infrastructure to allow it to go through all the different kinds of languages. Imagine India against that backdrop. So we are managing almost billions of subscribers in the entire network space, and that's going through dozens and dozens of languages, right from the east to west to north to south. How many different types of languages are being used, and we are therefore being able to localize the whole NLP engineering, the natural language processing engineering. And that in the future can also allow autonomous agentic platforms to thrive, because it would understand what exactly is going on in this kind of a discussion set that is getting built into, and the training material that is getting built into, and therefore trigger the kind of self repairs, the optimizations, and the personalized way to reach out to the subscribers for that matter, and gain more trust and more real time response to the end subscribers. And lastly, I can also talk about the fact that the government of India is taking a huge amount of step. I mean, we just saw the India AI mission getting conducted, and with the Prime Minister, with all the global leaders coming into India, it gave a lot of emphasis on how we can have the private and the public sector joining hands and creating the right kind of infrastructure which will allow us to thrive in this kind of a huge environment that we have built up. So I believe that India is really very well poised to take this shift while the AI movement is taking place because of all the points that I just mentioned over here. And I think we can definitely make it as a differentiator for the country in the coming days.
Absolutely, Samit. And I think because for the longest time, India was largely viewed as a cost and scale
Correct.
market for telecom. But
Correct.
now the narrative is, clearly shifting from being just a large consumer base to becoming a serious innovation and engineering hub for AI-led telecom transformation. And I
True.
think not just, telecom transformation, but across different industries, we are seeing rapid advancements. And of course, I think it's interesting because currently India's trends, whether it's depth of engineering talent or the scale of digital infrastructure supported by government, initiatives and schemes, or
Right.
the amount of data, real-time data that is generated, it's all converging at the right time. So
Yes.
all of this is creating, perfect environment for the operators, telecom operators, and tech providers to experiment, innovate, and deploy AI at scale.
True. True. Very true.
Right. And, if you talk about the nature of business of telecom networks, they have been under structural long-term pressure. Network, with the boost of data and real-time data generating, there's network complexity. Then customer expectations are rising because they want high performance. Have cost pressures also because, the traffic growth is deceleration in developed markets as well. So
Right.
most directly in an industry where improved operational efficiency has become central to networks value equation, AI presents an opportunity to reimagine the domain and reset its economics while also delivering that exceptional performance.
True.
As these networks, become more intelligent, do telecom companies gain an opportunity to create an entirely new enterprise service, which can be powered by AI-driven infrastructure?
Yeah, I think that possibility is definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see that if I go back to the cloud environment when the cloud modifications were taking place, at that point of time also there was a lot of expectations that potentially the telecom operators would be able to cut down a lot of their costs and be able to become more optimized because cloud infrastructure allows you to become much more dynamic in terms of utilizing the resources, and therefore be able to create more service opportunities for their enterprise customers or the end subscribers like you and me. Now, unfortunately, the cloud movement did not bring that kind of a change. It brought, but it was much limited in nature. But if I compare the same thing now with agentic AI and the way AI is evolving almost on a daily basis, I think it is a little bit different. And I am much more confident and I'm much more optimistic in the kind of things that it holds for us. Like if I talk about, for example, intelligent multi-access edge computing, okay, which is a MEC fundamentals that are getting talked about right now. So we have a distributed AI inference getting created over here, which is instead of routing the enterprise data like a big enterprise, like a bank, for example, ICICI Bank, SBI, which are so big, so huge. So how do you route their enterprise data from a banking point of view, or similar other enterprises in other industries, to centralized public clouds, and then telcos can leverage their distributed edge cells that are there to host the localized AI workloads. Now, that can drastically cut down a lot of transit cost that takes place today or the delay in the transmission that takes place today. And banking is an industry, trading is an industry where you would like everything to happen on real-time basis. You do not want any kind of lag in the system. So typical use cases like if you want to have the citywide smart surveillance, which in India, for example, we are doing quite well now, and we are being able to therefore address many of the criminal scenarios much better than it was probably 5 to 7 years back. So powering the citywide smart surveillance or having a real-time drone navigation network, which can be used in the agricultural areas for that matter. given the kind of breadth and depth that we have in agriculture, and at the same time, government infrastructure trying to help the agriculture industry as much as possible, or creating an instant, let's say, automated checkout systems for large scale retail chains. I was in US till about a week back, and I was seeing some of those automatic retail chain checkout systems that are starting to come into play. Now, these are things which can be done very easily in the coming days as part of the different use cases. Another area that you can talk about in the network side is about the hyper local enterprise security, which is the zero trust networks, right? So edge level threat detections, how do you train the AI security models? And you know that AI security is becoming a very big subject these days, especially after Anthropic released Mythos, the kind of things that we are starting to see in that area. But just coming back again to your question of network, so if you can train the AI security models directly on the telemetry data that is flowing through all the network parameters on a regular basis, every day that telemetry data is flowing through the network parameter. So telcos can now spot and they can quarantine the specific cyber threats even before they are reaching the enterprise's internal IT systems. So it is possible to create that kind of a firewall or a guardrail before an enterprise can get attacked. And typically it can happen for the massive IoT deployments like the smart grids that are there for the power sector, or it can be related to the connected logistic fleets that are there, whether it is on the shipping logistics, whether it is on the road logistics. Again, in India, we can leverage this significantly because we have so much of wastage in the road transport related logistics that are there. So the fleet movement that is happening, these are areas where we can put in the individual devices which are lacking the processing power today to run independent kind of cybersecurity related antivirus software. So this is another area which we can look into. And maybe I can take just one more example, which is where maybe enterprise grade support can be created by the operators, is in the sovereign enterprise related generative AI clouds. So we know that the enterprises are looking to deploy big Gen AI models, okay? But they are afraid that what will happen if my data is leaking. Like in many cases of my customers, which are globally there, the customers are always afraid about the cloud related infrastructure, that what would happen if my data sets of my subscribers in this country is getting leaked to another country, wherever the data is flowing through, where are the cloud infrastructures kept. So telcos can pair up their high-speed localized fiber loops with the regional edge data centers, and then they can offer private, secure AI training grounds or the training environments. And typically, this would allow healthcare networks, defense networks, legal firms, all of these, they can say, okay, so I can now create my LLMs, my training grounds, and it will be under strict compliance with the local sovereignty laws of the data the way they are being kept. So you are absolutely right. There are so many possibilities now as we see that the network is starting to become more and more intelligent, that the telcos can provide different kinds of services, which is going to be powered by this kind of AI driven infrastructure.
Right, Samit, and thank you for that result-driven response that you shared with us. And I think telecom networks today are no longer being viewed as just connectivity pipelines.
True.
They are, they have transitioned already, I think, to digital platforms, intelligent digital platforms that can empower real-time decision making, predictive operations, or automation. And I think we are now seeing possibilities around edge computing and network management. Then, like you mentioned, smart grid, AI powered cybersecurity. So I
Right.
think these are also unlocking other benefits for other industries, healthcare or even smart cities. So, and I think it's also changing the relationship telecom providers have with enterprises.
Absolutely.
They were long viewed as just providing bandwidth and connectivity, but now they can position themselves as strategic tech partners that can help enterprises build smarter and more adaptive operations.
Absolutely.
So, Samit, I think for the longest time, we have been discussing about role of AI or how agentic AI is now considered as such a significant shift that it's changing the entire realm of telecom ecosystems. But I want to understand, where does human oversight play a role here then? When networks are or tech is taking the entire decision making somehow, what happens to human intervention, or where should leaders draw the line between autonomy and human oversight?
Yeah, this is a very good question. And I must tell you that as we are moving through our own transformation journey to get into an agentic world, this is a battle that I fight almost on a regular basis. That which are the areas that we need to have better guardrails, which are the areas where you really believe that the human in the loop is really making sense. And in some places, it doesn't make sense. You can really depend on AI fully, and in some places, you cannot. You must have a human in the loop in play. So, this is a very, very big question in front of the industry. And it is not only about the telcos or the networks, but it is for everyone who is bringing in AI in a big, big way. But just to again focus on your question per se, Priya, yes, we know the agentic AI is slowly taking us to that zero touch, zero trouble, autonomous kind of operations. I think if you also refer to the TM forum, you will find out that the level 4 and level 5 automation networks are getting defined as well over there. And all the telcos will slowly start to move towards level 4, level 5 kind of autonomous network definition that is getting created in TM forum. And at these advanced levels, the networks would be using the closed loop AI architectures so that it can think, it can self-configure, it can self-heal in real time, it can self-optimize on real time. And it would mean like it's like millions of daily basis micro decisions that takes place today that can be actually handed off without any kind of human intervention. I mean, today, for example, when the telcos gets lots of complaints from one place, and they would send their tower engineers and so on, then they would work on those towers, they would adjust the cell tower tilts, they would reroute some of the traffic spikes if something is happening in that specific area, or mitigate some kind of local faults and so on. Many of these things slowly would move into the agentic world, that you will not need human interventions. You can actually work on them directly. And here I can give you some thoughts, some examples that probably the telcos would be dealing with, which is looking at both ends. Okay, so if you talk about, let's say, for example, a financial or asset related impact threshold. So if it is an autonomous world, then anything which is in the autonomous zone, minor reversible tactical changes, like for example, you want to change a dynamic 5G slice allocation or give a edge node power scaling, it can be fully autonomous. You do not need to do anything. Okay, it can get to that level 4 kind of autonomous work. But you need a line of oversight if it is going to impact something which is long-term capital expense. So if you have a huge capex that is coming into play, which will permanently commit to some kind of an infrastructure assets, then you must have a human validation that should we do this or should we not do this. So the AI can be used for creating your expansion plans on how you want to get out of the congestion models that are there. But humans should have the final say that whether the budgetary approval or procurement is needed for this or not needed for this. You should not depend on AI for that matter. Another area, for example, could be public safety. So in public safety, normal traffic load balancing and consumer commercial optimizations, they can become completely seamless. Okay, they can become totally closed loop automation. But let's say you have a national emergency, you have a natural disaster, for example, at a national level. You have some major public safety events that is being carried out. Now, under those circumstances, you cannot depend only on autonomous algorithms only. So you should look at how the human acceptance of those guardrails are being applied at that point of time. So how do you want to do a lockdown? How do you want to prioritize emergency service lines? How do you want to act on a disaster response on during the times of flood or storms, okay, or war related situations and so on? You cannot let it go just because you have all the load balancing, traffic balancing, optimizations already playing out. So that's another area to look into. And maybe another example I can share is you and I know the whole cyber defense area, which is a typical area where regular basis you see so much of DDoS, the distributed denial of services attack that takes place. I was reading that during the elections that happened recently in West Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and so on, the election commission sites and the activities that they were being carried out, it was facing thousands of DDoS attacks, thousands. Okay, and really they have put in a good system in place to avoid things being taken out of service. So those kinds of DDoS attacks that are there, or unauthorized API breach attempts that are there, you can easily put in all these autonomous checks and balances in place, and it can instantly quarantine, and it can look at the target endpoints and quarantine them. Now this is something which you can definitely do. But if you talk about the human intervention, then when there is an initial containment which is being machine driven, and subsequently you need to understand what kind of forensics are taking place, like rewriting a core security policy or permanently blacklisting a certain enterprise client, or understanding that you have a threat actor coming from some foreign country. How do you notify state regulators? How do you create the right kind of legal and technical guardrails and balances to avoid that? This would still need some amount of human oversight. So there are different kinds of scenarios like that which are getting built up across the places, where you can give a lot of, I would say, leeway, a lot of bandwidth to the autonomous zones, and allow it to operate based on the learning models that you have created. And over a period of time, you have gained trust to say, hey, this part can continue to run on its own. I trust it. I know this part can take care of my issues, whether it is on SLAs, financials, cybersecurity, public safety, all kinds of things. But there is a line, and that line is related to the areas where we do believe still the human in the loop is important to take a decision and make sure that we are not going beyond a certain limit.
Very well said, Samit. And I believe, just to, wrap up our conversation, that agentic AI is not just another tech upgrade, but a strategic shift in how telecoms operate, compete, and serve. And will
True.
we see fully autonomous, human-free networks tomorrow? Well, that's not the right question. The
Hmm.
practical opportunity today is human-centered autonomy, where networks, handle the repetitive, protect margins, and improve experience, while we humans set the intent. And when, the technology is ready, and when we design it for trust and clarity, people's role will adoption will eventually follow. Well,
True.
thank you so much, Samit, for taking on the time and effort to be on a podcast today and sharing some fantastic insights and, some wonderful applications and examples to help our listeners understand the impact of AI and agentic AI in telecom sector, and how, each and everyone's role will be evolving. And I think the sector's digital transformation has reached a tipping point with agentic AI arriving, by it's kind of binding all the different pieces of digitization together and serving as an intelligent glue. Thank you for your insights, Summit. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Priya. It was good to talk to you as well, and sharing some of the thoughts that I have, and some of the things that I'm seeing in the
Yeah,
telecom industry, being in the place where I am with Amdocs and the global space that we're operating in.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Samit.
Thank you.
So, this is for our listeners. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion around the impact of agentic AI in telecom sector and what are the different roles that we'll be witnessing in the coming years. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and you can view all our previous episodes on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.